All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Um, if you have not yet, and it appears as though everyone has, please mute your phone or your computer so we don't get any background noise. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Merritt Green. I'm the founder managing partner of General Counsel PC, which is a law firm in McLean, Virginia. I'm also the owner of Business Compliance LLC, which has been working on these COVID emergency standard forms. With me here today is David Perano, who is a law student who's an intern with us and has really been helping out and probably spent several hundred hours in the past few weeks going through all the regulations and helping us get all of the forms up and running and understanding the temporary emergency standard and helping our clients. So thank you very much. As we go forward, if everyone can keep their phone muted, if you have particular questions as we go on, please use the chat function, and then I'll also be sure to allow time for questions at the end of the presentation. So first, just a quick overview. As I said, my name is Merritt Green. General Counsel PC is a law firm that I started about 15 years ago. We're in McLean, Virginia, and we, as the name implies, we're general counsel to businesses and nonprofits throughout Virginia and a number of businesses throughout the United States, primarily helping clients with day in, day out legal issues from employment law, corporate business issues, government contracts, and litigation. So obviously, please follow up with us at any time with any questions that you might have, or we can help with any sort of legal issues. But today we want to talk about the COVID-19 temporary emergency standard. So David and I will do this presentation together, but I'll go ahead and start. I think to start off with, it's important to think about why the standard was enacted and what the purpose is to do. So you see the quote from Governor Northam here. It's keeping Virginians safe at work is not only a critical part of stopping the spread of the virus, but it's part of the economic recovery, and it's the right thing to do. And as we go through this, and as I was talking with clients over the past few weeks, the initial reaction I got from a lot of our clients was, oh, this is a pain. Why is Virginia the only state in the whole country that's doing this? Why do we have these additional burdens? And as we thought about it and talked through it with them, I really came to see it as an opportunity for Virginia employers. It's an opportunity to take a lead and hopefully get ahead of COVID. It's an opportunity to let your employees know that you care about them and want to provide a safe work environment. It's an opportunity to let your customers and clients know the same thing, that you're having a safe environment for them to shop or buy your services. So I think in that regard, it's a real benefit for Virginia employers. And now what we have to get through is, one, there's so many Virginia employers out there who don't know that they have this requirement. And two, they don't know how to comply if they do know about it. So that's really what we've tried to establish through our automated forms process that we'll talk about in a little bit. So just quickly, the emergency temporary standard became effective July 27th, a week from today, July 26th. Most of the documents must be in place and businesses must be compliant. I'll repeat that because most folks don't know that. A week from today, you need to have documentation in place and start working on compliance. That is for most employers throughout the state. For high-risk employers, there's additional training and an infectious preparedness plan that must be in place by September 25th. And for folks that continue to join, use the chat function with any questions, and we just got going. So you didn't really miss much. Number two, applicability. David, why don't you talk about applicability a little bit?
Sure. So this new temporary standard is applicable to pretty much all Virginia employers that are covered by the VSOH. Now, who is covered by the VSOH? Employers that are covered by VSOH, pretty much every single employer in Virginia except for maritime employees, contract-based employers for the USPS, and any employers that are either employed in a federal government facility or do contract work for the federal government. In those three cases, usually federal law applies, and this regulation does not cover you as an employer. But if you are outside of these three categories, then you are covered by this temporary standard, and you have until next week to comply with the requirements.
And some of the questions that we've had from individuals and companies is, I only have 2 employees. Do I still really need to do this? The answer is yes. Or someone else might say, I only have 1 employee, and I have 10 part-time employees. Do I still need to do it? The answer is yes. Another one is, I'm a sole proprietor and I pay myself as a W-2. Does it still apply? If you're being paid as a W-2, the answer is yes. So it really is broad scope of applicability. Now, that being said, if you're a sole proprietor, is the Virginia Occupational Safety Health Department going to come to your home and, ask to see this? Most likely not. But technically it is applicable. All right, risk categories. So I'll give a quick introduction, then David give you some more details here. So the risk categories and how the statute works is the employers throughout Virginia need to self-identify what sort of risk they have. What is their industry? What is the risk in conducting their business for COVID exposure or spreading? So David, why don't you go from there?
Sure. So as you can see, the standard divides all employers into 4 different categories of risk, like Merritt said. So very high employers, very high risk employers, I should say. These are employers who perform duties that work closely with persons who are suspected to have or are known to have COVID-19. Things such as specimen collections or surgeries or dental procedures usually also fall within this very high category, anything that is aerosol generating. The high category is a little bit less strict. This category, though, is still mostly applicable to the medical field in things such as mental health providers, nursing homes, mortuary services, things like that, particularly employers whose employees come into frequent contact with a high number of people who may or may not have COVID-19. The medium risk category, I would say, is the most overarching and the most encompassing of all of the categories. And I would say this is where most employers fall into. This category encompasses everything from pilots, bus drivers, bars, spas, gyms, restaurants, entertainment facilities, and all of those employers whose employees come into frequent contact with the general public within 6 feet of distancing. The lower category is mostly office spaces and employers whose employees avoid contact with the general public and even with their other coworkers within 6 feet. It's places where something like each employee has their own office space, people can wear masks around the office, and it's a very minimal interaction with other people.
Thank you. Requirements for very high, and it's medium with 11 or more. So how the statute works is it provides 2 sort of large categories of documentation and things that you need to do. And the forms generator, that is how we've divided it also. So for medium employees that have 11 or more employees, you'd have some of the same requirements as very high and high employers. So David, why don't you talk about that a little bit also?
Sure. So as you can see, these are some of the requirements that very high, and medium with more than 11 employees have. They do, all of these categories of employers have mandatory sanitation protocols. They have to provide specific sanitation equipment and very specific hand sanitizers and things like that. They have to provide their employees with PPE, and it has to be appropriate PPE for the type of task that they are doing. And they have to ensure that their employees are correctly wearing their PPE. They also have to implement an infectious disease prevention and preparedness and response plan. And this handbook will serve as a guide for employers and employees on what the steps will be for the continuity of work if there is an outbreak of coronavirus at the workplace. I think this is the main distinction between this category and the next one.
So next, I want to go on to medium or lower risk.
Sure. So these employers are also going to have to provide sanitation equipment. They're going to have to ensure at least 6 feet of distancing, and they are going to have to ensure proper PPE usage as well. Though employers within this category, PPE will likely just be face coverings, maybe a little bit more where required, but it's usually just going to be face coverings.
Good. Implementation.
So the implementation, like Merritt said earlier, we have until August 26th to implement most of these documents, aside from the infectious disease preparedness and response plan, which employers have until September 25th to implement. But it is a deadline that's coming up fast, and employers need to be aware of it.
And then you have to the 25th for the infectious disease.
Correct.
So, and then quickly, just penalties. You know, again, the penalties can range from 13,000 to 135, depending on the severity. I don't think a small employer who, you know, waits a week or two to put this plan in place is going to get dinged with such a penalty. What's really going to happen is it's going to be an employee, a customer, a client who can make a complaint. And if there's ongoing or willful violations, that's where you could really get some of these penalties. Something to keep in mind. So this gets us to sort of the emergency standard form generator that we've worked on. And as we've gone through some of the implementation here, it can be confusing. And for a lot of clients that we talk to, they said, okay, well, we need to put in some of these policies and procedures. How do we do it? You know, what sort of policies and procedures do we need? How do we implement it? How do we train our employees? And all of those things. And as we've talked to our clients, we figure there has to be an easier way to do it. And that's what we tried to put together through this emergency standard form generator. It provides, through 2 or 3 simple questions, determines whether you're low, medium, or high risk category. And then from there, provides you all the documents that you need. So for example, the medium risk employers with more than 11 employees and the high-risk employers, for $350, you get the documents that you need to allow the company to comply with the regulations. So you get an employer checklist. This really works as a roadmap for the employer to think through what they need to do to comply with the statute. You don't have to read the 50-plus page statute. You don't have to figure out exactly what's required. You have this roadmap. You also have a roadmap for employees, so they know what to do, what's expected of them. You have a return to work plan. This is help, you know, as it says, getting your employees back to work, what to do after someone has been tested or has suspicion of COVID, you know, how you bring them back into the workplace. And there are 2 choices here. We provided both options for the employers that buy this generator. It's either test-based or symptom-based, time-based. You know, both of them are there. Part of the requirements of the statute is training for employees. You know, as we talk to clients, they said, how do we put together all these training materials? What do we need to do? So we put together a full training PowerPoint that you need to share with your employees, you know, and perhaps have your managers go through also very carefully. For the high risk, as we talked about, also you have this infectious disease preparedness and response plan. And then finally, you have an employee acknowledgement form, which is important for all employees to sign to acknowledge that they received this, put it into their personnel file. For the medium risk with less than 10 employees or lower risk, you have the same documentation, except that you don't have the infectious disease. So again, this provides you a roadmap of how to comply with this regulation and how to make sure that you're really following instructions and best practices as required by the emergency temporary standard to have a safer workplace for your employees and then for your customers and clients. There is a duty report, and David, why don't you just talk about this quickly?
Sure. So all employers have a duty to report any positive cases that their employees might have. So all employers have to report a positive case. They have to maintain the anonymity of the employee within 24 hours to all fellow coworkers who worked with the infected employee, the building owner or manager, and the Virginia Department of Health. Now, if the employer has 3 or more positive cases within 14 days, aside from reporting it to the above mentioned entities, they also have to report it to the Virginia Department of Labor and Industry.
So, good. Just quickly, some reviews that we received. For Sales is an estate sales company. They wanted to thank us and say how easy it was to take care of the forms, and M3 Technology is an IT company who said that they were great and awesome and was really easy to utilize. Questions and more information. I think as we're sort of wrapping up here and going to some questions, and I know there's some questions in the chat function here also, I think it's important to go back to what Governor Northam said, is that the purpose here is to stop the spread and get Virginia businesses back on track towards recovery and allow them to safely operate and allow the employees to come back to work knowing it's safe, and customers and clients know also. It provides that opportunity for Virginia employers to lead the way back to safe workplaces. And this Virginia Emergency Standard Forms generator that we've created really provides the opportunity for those employers to do this easily and relatively inexpensively. And you can go to covidcomplianceforms.com to access it, and everything is there very simply to do. As I said, we talked to a number of clients who have struggled with how and what they're supposed to do here, and this really lays it out in a very simplistic manner. So that's really the bulk of the presentation. As I said, probably 20 to 30 minutes with questions, so we're almost at 20 minutes. So I know we have a few questions here in the chat function, so why don't I start with that, and then we could open up to questions on the telephones. So number one question was about what about a government contractor? So as a general rule, government contractor, you're in Virginia, it is applicable to all Virginia employers. So it doesn't matter if you're a government contractor or not. Now, there is one exception, as we talked about earlier, and I can go back to the form quickly right here. Employers located within federal facilities could be exempt under the Virginia Occupational Safety Health Plan. So if you are just operating some of your employees within a federal facility, you might not have the requirement there. I imagine the federal facility has requirements they'll be doing themselves. But if you have office space, where you have management and overhead employees, you would still need to comply in that regard. And I don't know what I just did here.
We just clicked on normal.
Okay. Oops, sorry about that. All right, so the next question. Our headquarters is in Virginia and our contracts are outside of Virginia. Does it just cover the employees at headquarters and HQ? The answer is yes. So really what you want to have here, this is applicable to employers and employees working in Virginia. So, if you have offices outside of Virginia, the Virginia statute is only applicable to what's happening within Virginia. Another question, would you be able to send us this PowerPoint? If you send an email to us at the vesforms@gcpc.com, yes, we'll be happy to send you the PowerPoint. Another question, we're headquartered outside of Virginia and have one W-2 employee who works from home in Virginia. Would we have to ensure this employee's home has these protocols in place? That's where it sort of gets a little bit difficult, because you just have the one W-2 employee. The regulations are to protect, employees in general. Technically speaking, as we talked about, yes, if you have an employee who's working, you're covered by the Virginia Occupational Safety Health regulations, so the emergency standard is applicable. If they're just working from their home, it is likely that it is a low risk environment, so it is simply um, a cost of $250 to get these in place. That being said, I can't imagine there would be any investigation that would force you to do it. So I'll leave it at the discretion from there. Someone just said the website's not working. David, can you check that?
Yes.
And I'll check it right here too. We can all do it together quickly. Nope.
It seems like they're servicing the website right now.
Oh, okay. The website might be down for a minute.
If you go to gcpc.com.
Well, here, I'll provide you another. There's another link, although it should all be together. If you send me an email at this VS Forms, I'll make sure we provide you the correct link. Although this should be working, and I apologize. I'm not sure why it's not. So, another question. Would it hurt to send this employees outside of Virginia or those that work at Virginia federal sites to cover all bases and protect all employees? Would it hurt? No. There are CDC guidelines that are in place, and we're actually going to be providing a automated process to get those in place within the next few weeks. So what I might do is oftentimes you have laws in different states that are more stringent than other states. You know, California comes to mind in a lot of their employment laws. Virginia more and more so now, although it didn't used to be. What we often will do is say, these are the legal requirements within Virginia, and we're considering following them as a guideline within a different state. But I would consider that on a case-by-case basis. Next question. If you have a mix of employees, medium and low risk, do all employees need training on the infectious disease and preparedness plan? I think it depends on where folks are working. So in other words, if you are a home nursing company, you know, clearly that is going to be a high risk. And all the employees that are going out into people's homes need to be treated within that high risk category. But then you also have an office staff where you're doing sales, marketing, accounting, and other business functions. That could be a low risk. So it really depends on the circumstances. Are employees that are going out into the high risk areas going back and forth? You know, is there intermingling of the employees? You know, the safe thing to do would be comply with the high across the board. You know, and that way, you know, it is, you're doing what is safe, and it shouldn't be that much of an additional impediment, because all you really need to do is the infectious disease and preparedness plan and have that in place for the company. So I think that is what I would recommend in that regard. Send the training. Can we not access the forms compliance without a fee? So within the Virginia Department of Labor, and then also the Virginia Safety and Health websites, there is some of this information. The actual regulation is there. They do provide some guidance, but what they don't do is customize it for you all. They don't provide the employer and employee checklist that we provide to you. They don't provide the employee return to work forms with the different options to the same extent we do customized. They don't have the employee acknowledgement forms. So yes, you can get this information somewhere else. What we've figured out is that it's just a lot easier to know what you need to do by using the automated process. It's either $203 or $350. You know, we realized that if employers were going to lawyers to get these, it'd probably be $2,000 or $3,000 to get them on a case-by-case basis. So we tried to create an affordable, easy way for Virginia employers to comply with this law. For the forms that we've created, you can only get through our system. Next question was for an LLC operated by an owner without a W-2, do we need to comply with the emergency temporary standard? In that regard, it doesn't seem as though you'd have any employees. You know, you're an owner, but you're not an employee. So in that circumstance, I think technically you would not have to apply. It would not be applicable. Next question. If an employer has more than 11 employees, but is otherwise considered low risk, are they precluded from being considered a low risk? No. So what happens is if you're in the medium category, let's say a gym, you know, or something along those lines, a restaurant, there is 11 or more is whether or not you're in the higher risk or the lower risk. If you're in a lower risk office place, an architecture firm, a CPA firm, you know, a law firm, you know, it doesn't matter how many employees you have, you'll still be within that lower risk. Next question was a continuation of the one before as it related to an LLC with just a single owner and no employees. So we've already answered that. And then here's another question. As an executive administrator, do we need to be looking for similar requirements from each state if they're employees in other states? So Virginia is the first and only state that has implemented mandatory requirements in this regard. Governor Northam, when he made the announcement about this, said, since the federal government is not stepping in and providing these regulations, Virginia is going to do so. I don't know if other states are going to. I anticipate that they will, especially if the virus gets worse this fall in any manner. But what I would do in other states is look to comply with CDC regulations and guidelines. And as I said, within the next 2 weeks, we'll probably have some automated documents to help you do that also. So we can check back or we'll send out an email when that is done. Next question was, thank you for developing and providing this on an affordable basis. Well, thank you very much. That wasn't even my mom who said that, so thank you. Next, when you're referring to low, medium, high risk, etc., does the company as a whole get that rating, or can we rate the contracts different sites based on what we feel they do? Headquarters works at home, one of our contracts goes to the office, works around people. I think it really depends on the circumstances. You know, I think you need to consider, is there much intermingling, if you will, of the employees, some of who are low, some of which are high. If there is, I think the safe course of action is to have high across the board, especially since the additional requirement is not terribly onerous, just having to develop the infectious preparedness plan, you know, which might be a good practice anyway. So I think I'll look at the circumstances and go from there. Another question. Is it applicable to the company that low risk has less than 11 employees? So if you have any employees at all, you need to comply. So for that lower risk company with less than 11 employees, you just need to do the lower risk requirements. Next question, and thank you for all the questions. Which entity will be conducting audits to ensure that Virginia employers are compliant? You know, I have not read anywhere that there will be audits, and I don't know if, David, you've seen anything in that regard also. I think it's more going to be employees, customers will file complaints with the Virginia Occupational Safety Health or the Department of Labor if they think that employers are not complying. I think that's where the risk is. David, do you agree?
There is a chance that the Virginia Department of Labor and Industry would conduct random audits, but as of now, it is mostly based on employee complaints.
And then where can we report if employers are not compliant with the emergency temporary standard? I imagine, and I don't know it off the top of my head, but on the Department of Labor or the Virginia Occupational Safety and Health website, I imagine there is a mechanism there for reporting purposes. So that is all the questions we have on the chat function. Does anyone have on the telephone call a question that has not been addressed that we could help with? I'm not hearing anyone. So I know we addressed a whole bunch of questions. If anyone has any questions at all, please email us at the vsforms@gcpc.com. If we can help in any manner, please let us know. I hope you all find this helpful. Discount code. If you can receive a 10% discount if you use the code referral, all in caps. So REFERRAL, all in caps, referral. And you can use that for yourselves. And if you have friends, family, colleagues, competitors, other businesses that you can give them that discount code also to get the 10% discount off the forms. So it makes it a little bit more affordable for everyone. Although we did price this in a manner that we thought any and all Virginia employers can utilize it to keep it relatively inexpensive. So hearing no questions, let's see, I might have a few more chat questions. Thank you. I will send out, here, let me do one thing. So to go to it looks like we're having some technical difficulties here. Go to gcpc.com. So George Charlie Peter Charlie.com. If you have any questions, you go to that website, go under resources, and the forms generator is there. I apologize tremendously. It also should be on the email that you all received announcing this webinar. So I apologize if the COVIDcomplianceforms.com is not working right now, but please, let me know, and we can go from there. And you can go to gcpc.com. Looks like we have one or two more questions. And also, and again, I apologize, if vsforms.com at GCPC is not working, you can always send an email to info@gcpc.com, and we'll get to that also. Another question, our company has more than 11 employees, but by answering no to both initial questions, it populates the 250 package. So if you are in the low risk category, even though you have more than 11 employees, you'll still be within that 250 package. So you'll be fine in that regard. Another question, what are the business choices on the page where the forms don't apply? Then most likely you're going to be in that lower risk. So I think you go from there. If you have a particular question, again, email us at info@gcpc.com or vesforms@gcpc.com. All right. I think that we're about done. We haven't had any questions. Oh, let me see here. Let me try one more thing. All right. Does anyone have any questions from the audience? Yeah, it looks like I'm working to unmute folks. That's working. All right. Last question. Oh, there you go. Try that. COVIDcomplianceplans.com. And thank you all. I'm going to go ahead and stop now. Thank you. Take care. And hopefully, if you need any help, please let us know. Bye-bye.